Korean drivers are shocked at the pump as prices have well passed the 1600 won per liter mark. The oil prices have been on a steady increase since the latter half of last year. There are several reasons for this. First are the geopolitical concerns in the Middle East, such as the war in Syria and the situation between Israel and Iran. The Trump administration's recent withdrawal from the Iranian nuclear deal and the embassy move to Jerusalem further worsen the problem. Oil prices reached about $80 per barrel in May, which is a big jump from the $40 to $50 level from the same time last year. To many people's relief, several oil exporting countries have recently decided to increase their production and the prices seem to be stabilizing. But it's too early to be optimistic about where the prices will move. In Korea, rising oil prices are a cause for concern, not only for the drivers. High oil prices, along with the rising interest rate in the U.S., are putting further strain on the Korean economy. When higher oil prices increase the risk of inflation, the U.S. Federal Reserve is under more pressure to raise the interest rate. The increasing gap of interest rates between the U.S. and Korea accelerate the flight of foreign investors from the Korean market, which can push down stock prices in Korea. Also, if the Bank of Korea increases the interest rate to follow suit, households with debt will further have to tighten their belts to pay the interest, which in turn will shrink domestic consumption. It's hard to predict the future, so we don't need to be too pessimistic based only on the worst-case scenarios. But as people say, we have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Everyone should be prepared, not to mention the government, that should steer the economy through the potential storm. Issues related to geopolitics trump supply and demand when it comes to oil prices. So there are a lot of big words there. First, geopolitics. So when we break that word down, geo means earth and politics means politics. So when we talk about geopolitics, we talk about the events in the world. So like we said before, the conflict between Israel and Iran and connected with the United States and oil prices. That is a geopolitical issue. So I said the issues related to geopolitics trump supply and demand. So you may think of Trump as in the president Donald Trump, but we also use Trump as a verb. To trump means to beat or to do better than someone else. If you're playing cards, for example, an ace can trump a jack, or a jack can trump a nine. We also use it if you want to compare two things and say one thing's better. For example, if you go say I'm going on vacation to Jeju, well, I can trump that. I'm going on vacation to Hawaii. So we use trump to beat. Also, the issues related to geopolitics trump supply and demand. So supply and demand is the expression we use for goods and services that are affected by their numbers of supply and then their demand by the consumers that pay for it. For example, if people stopped drinking coffee, the supply would go up and the demand would decrease, and so would the price. So whenever we have an issue related to the quantity and the price of something, we say supply and demand. Gas prices are affected by world events and not consumption. So previous I said oil prices. This sentence I said gas prices. So United States, we say both. Oil prices, gas prices. But if you're speaking UK English or traveling to Australia or Ireland, they use petrol or petrol prices instead of gas or oil prices. If inflation goes up, so will the interest rate. This will increase the value of the dollar. So when we talk about inflation, that is when the costs of goods and services and products, they go up, but you're not getting any more. So for example, a cup of coffee costs $5 and then one day it's $7. That's inflation. You're getting the same cup of coffee, but it's more expensive. The Federal Reserve will raise the interest rate if inflation worsens. This in turn will make the dollar stronger. So I said the Fed or the Federal Reserve will raise the interest rate if inflation worsens. This in turn, so when we use in turn, it means kind of the next thing that will happen or the next turn in events. So this in turn will make the dollar stronger. So the dollar will be stronger if inflation worsens. Foreign investors will pull out of the Korean market if the interest rate gap increases. This will negatively affect the stock market. So I said foreign investors will pull out of the Korean market. That means they will no longer do business here. They will either withdraw some of their money or all of their money out of the Korean market. So we say to pull out of somewhere means you take either money or people or things and you remove them and you bring them back to their home or origin. And then we talked about the market if the interest rate gap increases. So the interest rate gap is if the interest rate, if let's say, for example, in Korea it's 2% and then in the US it's 3%, but if the US increases it to 4%, that gap is widening. So we say the interest rate gap increases. If the interest gap increases, foreign investment will shrink along with the stock market. So I said foreign investment will shrink along with means they get smaller together. So as foreign investment goes down, so will the Korean stock market. Both will get smaller. The OPEC nations agreed to accelerate oil production, which will lower gas prices. So I said the OPEC nations agreed to accelerate oil production. To accelerate means to move faster or to speed up rapidly. So they are going to produce more oil in the near future quickly. In order to curb rising oil prices, oil-rich nations pledged to increase production. So I said, in order to curb rising oil prices, to curb means to reduce or to lower. So in order to curb the rising prices, they'll produce more oil, thus creating more supply and lowering the price. And I said, oil-rich nations pledged. So we talk about countries with lots of oil, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Brunei, Venezuela. We usually say, we group them together and say oil-rich nations. And they pledge to increase production. To pledge is to make a promise or to guarantee something. So if, I pledge that I will exercise every day, that means I'm making a promise to myself that I will exercise. Extra fuel charges for air travel are likely to increase along with the rise in oil prices, affecting travelers during the summer season. Summer travelers will be hit the hardest as rising oil prices will also increase the cost of air travel. So I said summer travelers will be hit the hardest. So if you're hit the hardest, you take the most damage, either physical, emotional, or financial. So since the oil prices will be high, if people are planning to travel, they're going to spend a lot more money. So they're going to get hit pretty hard in their wallet. We also use hit the hardest, for example, in weather. If you had a typhoon that was coming from the south, it would hit Busan the hardest or Yosu the hardest. Seoul would not be affected after the typhoon hit land, but it means to take the most damage. Thanks for downloading, guys, and thanks for telling your friends. We really appreciate it. Bye-bye.